Paul Manafort's lawyer is now on record as having talked to Trump's legal team. They are sharing information about what's happening with the Mueller investigation that broke earlier today and yesterday. What kinds of stuff is being shared between the Manafort team and the Trump team? For example, says the New York Times, Mr. Giuliani reports that Mr. Manafort's lawyer, Kevin M. Downing, told him that prosecutors hammered away at whether the president knew about the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting, where Russians promised to deliver damaging information on Hillary Clinton to his eldest son, Donald Trump Jr. The president has long denied knowing about the meeting in advance. He wants Manafort to incriminate Trump, Mr. Giuliani declared, of Mueller. So that's the kind of information that they are sharing back and forth. Now, this is actually a legal thing that people do when they are, involved in similar defenses to an ongoing investigation or prosecution. And so, what is your takeaway from hearing that these two parties are talking to each other?
Well, so two takeaways. One is obviously Manafort never intended to cooperate with the special counsel, and he was just gathering information and relaying it on to Donald Trump in an effort to get a pardon. Most obvious thing in the world. And Donald Trump is, as you're going to see in a second, saying, yeah, maybe. But the problem is that they're relaying it to Donald Trump, who can't shut his mouth. So he started going around saying, oh, you wouldn't believe the stories from inside Mueller's investigation. And so Mueller was like, what do you mean insider investigation, right? And then he started telling details of what they were asking Manafort for. And then the special counsel figured out, oh, Manafort's lawyer is talking to Trump. So they're like, okay, the deal's off. You're a liar. We're going to throw you in jail for a long, long time. So he has no sophistication at all, Donald Trump. If he did, he would have kept that basically mole inside the special counsel's office for as long as he possibly could to milk more information out.
Right, and usually what happens in these situations, as has been reported, is it's totally common for there to be these kinds of pacts between defense teams. But usually when one of the people in that pact turns state's evidence, they step out of that pact. That's what happened with Flynn when Flynn turned and started working with the government. That is when he said, listen, I'm out. And that was kind of the signal that we saw that kind of tipped the hat that Flynn was about to flip. And in this situation, he just was like, I'm gonna have it all kinds of ways. Despite what was happening, it's been reported in the actual pact itself that, or in the plea deal that Manafort had, where it was preserved that despite whatever happens with a pardon, a potential pardon that Trump hands over to Manafort, they were still going to, regardless of his conviction stands or his deal stands, they would still take all of his money. And in this situation, my question is, if the plea deal has fallen apart, as we see that it has, does the part where they confiscate all his money also stand? Or does it revert back to a situation where now he goes back and faces his however many charges? He's got 2 charges of conspiracy, 8 charges of financial fraud. If he, after having related the kinds of questions that are going to be asked to Trump and all the ways that the Mueller is going about that kind of stuff, does he now go back to the same position where he faces a potential prosecution, conviction, sentencing, confiscation of his funds, and then a pardon that since the plea deal has been dissolved, absolves him of ever having to give over his money because the conviction's overturned?
So let me answer that question and then give the second part. One, yeah, they're going to take everything of this. I mean, I'm sure that the special counsel's office is super pissed. They're like, oh yeah, you lied to us over and over again originally, and one of the reasons you were convicted in the first place, and now you lied to us a second time, and you gave all the information to the person that we were investigating. And we have it in an agreement that if you do that, we get to take all of your assets in a civil forfeiture. We take your house, we take all your property. Yeah, they're going to take it. He's done with that. So Manafort was in desperate straits. So he knew he'd lose all his wealth based on that. And he did it anyway, because for whatever reason, he might be literally scared to death of turning evidence against not just Donald Trump, but perhaps against the Russians.
Yeah, that's what he's got to be most afraid of, because they kill people.
Yeah, I mean, that's literal. That's literal.
Yeah,
so
he is deciding between life in prison and losing his life.
Yeah, and he's staying in solitary confinement now. Why? Because of security. Security what? He's got nothing to do with the mob or Aryan Brotherhood or anything like that. Security because there might be Russians inside the prison. Anyway, the other part is Rudy Giuliani said, this is outrageous. That's Trump's lawyer, obviously. He said, it turns out they were trying to get Manafort to give evidence on other people. Yeah, that's why, that's how flipping works. Why he got the plea deal. What did you think was happening? That they were like, okay, all right, we were going to give you a huge sentence, but we're going to give you a lesser sentence now if you just play backgammon with me. No, you do it for evidence against other people, right?
Yeah.
So, but they make it seem like, oh, it's a conspiracy. No, it's prosecutor 101.
And specifically about that, like solitary confinement for security reasons, here's what's so weird hearing Rudy Giuliani say. And he'll just go on and say whatever comes to mind or whatever he thinks is expedient or makes a good point to his base. Mr. Giuliani accused the prosecutor overseeing the Manafort investigation, Andrew Weissman, of keeping Mr. Manafort in solitary confinement simply in hopes of forcing him to give false testimony about the president. Even though on record we see people saying the reason Manafort's team asked to be in solitary confinement because of what Cenk said. But Rudy still goes out there and says, well, he's really trying to make him go crazy and threatening him that he's going to be in solitary in the hold, like in Shawshank Redemption. Okay. So ridiculous.
Because they have no attachment to the truth, so they don't care. So now let's go to what Trump said about the pardon. Now, like if you pardon Manafort, that would seem to be egregious. There's now people that worked in the government before in national security saying, well, you got to get him out of office. If he pardons Manafort, that's outrageous. I mean, Manafort was convicted of 8 counts of financial fraud, 2 conspiracy charges, and he's clearly giving information over to Trump, who might be the target of the investigation. But it's a slow motion Saturday Night Massacre. So Nixon did it all in one fell swoop, and that's why it's called the Saturday Night Massacre, when he fired everyone who wouldn't listen to his orders to protect him from legal ramifications. Trump is just doing it one at a time. Okay, Jeff Sessions, you're gone. Right now I'm gonna put in this goon, Mark Whitaker, to do my bidding. Now Manafort, maybe I pardon you, like I pardoned Arpaio and Dinesh D'Souza.
Right. Well, that was crazy because Nixon did it so quickly in a time when everyone had a really long attention span. And now Trump is doing it slowly in a time when things come and go from the news so much faster that people like, what happened a week ago? We don't even remember.
Yeah.
But then what did Trump actually say specifically? This is the second to last graphic in this story about the pardon. He said, it was never discussed, but I wouldn't take it off the table. Why would I take it off the table?
You would take it off the table because he did financial fraud and a jury convicted him. You would take it off the table because he hid $30 million of ill-gotten assets. You would take it off the table because he was a foreign agent of a hostile government and didn't report it. You would take all that off the table because he was convicted by a jury of his peers. But you wouldn't take it off the table if you like criminals who protect other criminals like yourself. Trump also said, you know, this flipping stuff is terrible. You flip and you lie and you get, the prosecutors will tell you 99% of the time they can get people to flip. It's rare that they can't. This is the second time he has said that cooperating with law enforcement is, quote, terrible. He ran on rule of law and he says, oh my God, the caravan, and we're gonna do rule of law. And you say, all right, well, the people should obviously then cooperate with law enforcement. No, it's terrible. This flipping and cooperating with them is terrible. And last time he said, maybe it ought to be illegal. It ought to be illegal to cooperate with law enforcement, the president of the United States is saying. So he said, what about Manafort? He said, it's actually very brave. And I'm telling you, this is McCarthyism. We're in the McCarthy area. This is no better than McCarthy, okay? No, McCarthy targeted people that weren't guilty. And when he says Manafort's being brave, that's him saying, yeah, he's protecting me. And so like a good mob boss, I'm gonna protect him.
Yeah, McCarthyism is scaring people into thinking an entire group is evil and bad and working against your interest. McCarthyism is what you're doing about the caravan, idiot.
Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.